Yeah.
Okay, we'll call the meeting to order now. We finally hit the appropriate time. We do have a quorum, correct, Jared? We do have a quorum. We've got a few people online, as you may see on your monitor. So at this time, if I would request a motion to accept the agenda.
Welling Clark, El Paso County, motion to accept the agenda as submitted.
A second.
Kathy Heisey, I'll second.
Okay, any discussion? I don't think there is any. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Agenda's accepted then. Okay, moving on to, before we go any further, we do have a new member today. Tyler, if you'd like to introduce yourself and say anything that's pertinent to the meeting here.
This one?
There you go.
Hey, my name is Tyler Peoples. I'm glad to be on this board, and I'm glad to be of any help that I can. I'm born and raised in Colorado Springs, and I just love this community.
Okay, moving on. Have you all had the opportunity to look at last month's minutes? And if so, we'll entertain a motion to accept those or changes.
Just one edit.
Okay.
Can you make an edit to my first name, Roland? And there it says Ronald.
Did you catch it, Jared?
Me a little bit late, you know.
That has been noted. Any other changes? Hearing none, we entertain a motion at this time to accept the minutes.
We'll
Check
move
the
approval
above
of the
from-
minutes with the correction of Roland's name.
Okay, a second.
Chuck Theobald, I second the motion.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
There. Was that a late? Okay. Okay. Okay.
Aye. Looks like we get to do the minutes next.
Okay. Okay, do we have any public comments on the line, Jared? Or?
So I recognize everyone who's online is either staff or CAC members, so I don't see we have anybody online for public comments. I'll ask that anyone in the room to please go up to the podium. I'm also recognizing that everyone in the room is either presenting an item or our staff members, and we also did not receive any advance requests for public comment or any written comment. So I believe all that being said, we are clear to move forward.
Okay, thank you, Jared. Okay, at this time, we'll have the action items, and I believe, Jess, you're up first.
Yes, good afternoon. I'm Jessica Bechtel, and I'm the TIP program planner here at PPACG. And if you're unfamiliar with that, the TIP is our short range 4-year program of planning transportation projects and the funding for those. All of the projects in the MPO metropolitan planning area that are seeking federal transportation are listed in this TIP document. So part of that process, CDOT will enter in new funds, things like that for regional projects. And so what we're going to talk about today is one of those funding sources and a project that CDOT will be adding funds to. So I have John Hall from CDOT to explain that better. And if you have questions, let us know.
Jess, do you want your questions at the end of the presentation or interruptions during or? Okay.
Well, the presentation will hopefully be pretty quick here. So the bottom line is the current TIP has an item for $500,000 of mobility and safety improvements on State Highway 21. That is not a very specific scope. We've used those funds in the past for signal replacements and things like that, and we'll be looking for those types of opportunities still. This is FY25 funds, so not the current fiscal year anyways. We are proposing to take 100,000 of that and apply it to State Highway 105, which has a significant drainage and issue right on the southeast side of Palmer Lake, where the road is severely deteriorated. Our maintenance forces went in and did some repairs just recently on it, but it's a type of fix that really needs a more substantial engineering solution. So this first $100,000 will let us do some design, research, investigation, and just be prepared it could result in later asking to move some more of that funding from these mobility and safety improvements into construction, an actual construction project on 105. But we're just basically trying to make use of those RPP resources to look at a problem spot on our state highway system and address it. Yeah, I'm glad to take any questions on it.
I'm not seeing any in the room or online, so, all right.
No, we can't let that happen. No. Real quick, I just want to let everybody know too that when CDOT comes up, they have a 4-year tip. And then every year they actually update it. And in this case, you're pulling money out of FY25 construction and to shift it over to that other problem. Is that how I read this? Number 1 and 2?
Yeah, well, the only thing I might quibble with is I believe the actual tip description is design. But it is a design,
Right.
State Highway 21. So those not construction.
Oh, okay.
So
I'm sorry.
I think it's flexible. I mean, I think there's an intent for design or construction with those funds anyways to look at safety type stuff, but we're moving it just to a different corridor basically and addressing
And this is being moved from FY25.
staying in 25.
It's staying in
It's still-
25. So in 25, we're going to go ahead and do that study.
Oh no, we'll actually make use of the funds immediately.
okay.
We'll grab them. We'll be able to grab those funds and immediately put them to use on 105. Absolutely. And I'll just bring up too that just FYI, this is an issue that was brought up at the board. That's why we're here too. I mean, the Palmer Lake and stuff brought it up there in particular. So.
Anyone else?
Thank you very
Okay.
much.
Well, this is an action item, so we will need a motion to accept the changes as presented.
Well, in Clark, El Paso County, I motion to accept this item, pass it on to the board.
Do we have a second?
Miley Foster, I'll second.
Okay. Any additional discussion in the room? Online, I see none. Hearing no additional discussion, all in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? I'll go slower this time. Okay, that passes unanimous.
All right,
Thank you,
Mr.
Jeff.
Chair
Thank
Committee,
you.
thank you very much.
Okay, Danelle, since you're online, we'll have you up next.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm sorry to be virtual today. I've got a sick kiddo upstairs, but still here to present and happy to answer any questions you might have. We do have a bit of a longer update on the long range transportation plan today. So the first portion covers the public survey that was conducted a couple of months ago. We did receive a little over 800 unique responses in that survey. And in your packet, there is a short overview of some of those results. That's attachment 1 there. And this just really provides us with some baseline information so that we can put it into the LRTP. And we've also provided the more in-depth summary of these results to our local jurisdictions for their information as they move forward with submitting projects, et cetera. So a couple of things to note here. The average commute, the largest amount here was the 10 to 20 minute segment with 41%. And then that was followed by fewer than 10 minutes and then 20 to 40 minutes with 27 and 26% respectively. As far as transportation modes go, 94% of respondents said they use cars regularly. 53% said they walk regularly, which is quite an increase from our previous survey, which I believe was in the 27 range. 34 said they bicycle regularly and 8% use transit. Again, that was a big jump from our previous survey, which I believe was at 3%. Another thing to note, the majority of folks who took the survey did say that they felt transportation conditions were worsened either significantly or slightly. However, worsened significantly was the number 1 choice. Number 2 choice was that conditions had somewhat improved. And that's kind of a thing that we saw in a few different places where answers contradicted each other a bit. So a couple of the major concerns listed here as well, congestion, connectivity, and road conditions. And then we did give folks an opportunity to say what means they thought would improve regional mobility and congestion. And these are just the top 5 there that popped up. And then the second page of that attachment, if you could slide down, Jared, that would be great. Here's just some information specifically about transit. We did have a significant amount of folks who said they would choose to bicycle or to walk if it was both available and convenient, safe, and low stress. And then down below, those are the top ranked transportation priorities from this survey. So again, I mentioned there is some contradictory information that we got. For example, 71% of those folks did say they would be likely or extremely likely to walk. But then on the other hand, when we were asked to rank the transportation priorities, trails and sidewalks were actually last in that prioritization. So there's quite a bit of data there that we can use to put into the LRTP to note what the public's interests were, to talk about the needs in the area, and also that our jurisdictions can use as they move forward, both in their individual planning efforts and as they choose to select projects to submit for this LRTP. Before we move on to the 2 bigger action pieces of this, if anybody has any questions on the survey itself, we'd be happy to answer those.
Yes, Danelle, is there, on the respondents, did you keep track of the zip code area where they were responding from?
We did. We actually got respondents from, I think, 40, I have to look it up specifically, but there was more than 40 different zip codes represented, and across all portions of the MPO and even outside the MPO, which was great to see.
Okay, just want to make sure.
That's
Chris.
Chris Crockett, Kono. Hi, Danelle. Thank you for this. And I had a question. The 818 people, unique responses, how does that compare to previous surveys? Is that a good response, or what are you thinking about? Just the validity of the survey based on the number of responses that are there, given the population of the MPO?
Sure. So this is actually slightly more respondents than we received in our previous survey, which was in the 700s. I should point out the survey was not required to be statistically valid, if I can speak today. So it was sent out to a wide range of individuals, but obviously whoever selected to or chose to take the survey, it was up to them. A lot of these kinds of surveys are filled out in a kind of organic manner, which means, if I fill it out and then I send it to my friends and they have the same interests as me, they may fill it out in a similar way. So it's not meant to be a statistically valid cross section of the population, but it is still a tool I think that we can use for the LRTP.
Danelle, this is Judith. I probably missed it, but when was the last survey before this one?
The last one, we adopted the LRTP in 2020, and I believe the last survey was in the late 20 teens, but I can't remember exactly which year it was.
Well, go ahead.
Hi, Danielle. This kind of goes along with Ed. I was curious when we had a large portion say it worsened significantly and a large portion it somewhat improved. I was just curious if that was geographically isolated? That's one question. The other aspect is, I don't know if you've got the age of the people of where they would drive, walk, take mass transit or something of that nature, if that would be of use. And when I see the term commute, I take that as meaning that it is to and from work, not necessarily going to the store, or going to a venue or something of that nature. Is that a correct statement?
Yes, work
Okay.
or school.
Oh, okay.
In terms of the geographically isolated, we need to do a little bit more analysis on that particular issue. What I have seen so far, the answer is no. But I haven't seen that particular element correspond with any particular zip code, but we are still looking into that. The other thing is we did not ask for ages or any demographic information other than zip code for this particular survey.
Anyone else? Danelle, you can move on, I guess.
Okay. So part of this survey, as I mentioned, we are moving into the more development phases of the LRTP. So one of those elements is the vision and goals. And I believe that was attachment 2 to your packet memo. So we have assembled a regional transportation plan advisory committee. Ed Dills is actually has been sitting on that committee in part to represent CAC and in part to represent his other involvement in the community. But we asked the Rat Pack to take a look at the vision and mission and principles that were developed for the 2045 plan and kind of modify those, update them for this new 2050 plan, just to be kind of a guide. And then from there, the Rat Pack did approve these, and then we took them through the TAC. The TAC did have a couple of additional changes. So we have for you today hopefully for your recommendation to the board to adopt this. We have a proposed draft vision, which is develop a sustainable multimodal transportation system, facilities and services that meet regional mobility and accessibility expectations, improve the quality of life in the Pikes Peak region, and plan for the future of transportation. Just a very broad kind of all-encompassing vision for the MPO region. And then we do have 5 goals that were developed. The previous LRTP actually had 9, and they called them principles at the time, but we decided to change that to better align with the FHWA language. And the Rat Pack really felt that those 9 principles were in some ways redundant. There were some areas where there was some items that overlapped. So they really wanted to try to streamline those. And these are the 5 that they came up with. And again, I'm not going to read them to you, but happy to answer any questions. And we are looking for a recommendation from the CAC to take this onto the board. I don't know if you want to go through the other action item as well, or if you want to pause here, Ed, whatever you feel is best.
We have a question, so let's pause.
Hey, Danelle, I'm just curious, how are you guys measuring these goals? Do you have clear objectives of the baseline and what success will look like, or is it too far out into the future to really define that?
We will have some objectives, and we do have some performance measures. Our performance measures are tied into CDOT's performance measures and how those are adopted. I think the board actually adopted our most recent performance measures early in 2023. So those are kind of what we'll use to measure. But really, these are going into the scoring system. So we really want these to, basically every project that comes into the LRTP, we want to be able to tie back to at least one of these goals, if that makes sense.
Okay, that's helpful. Thank you.
Chris, go ahead.
Hi, Danelle. This is Chris Crockett again, Kono. I have a question about since the PPACG is also the lead air quality planning agency, is there overlap between that work and this work? I don't really see that in here, but maybe I'm not reading it as carefully as I should have. But could you speak to the long range transportation goals and how they are impacted by and how they impact air quality goals?
Sure, and I may phone a friend here if John Leosatos is in the room, because he's much more in touch with some of our greenhouse gas rule making than I am. But right now PPACG is in attainment with the federal requirements for air quality. So we actually don't have to do quite as much work as, say, Dr. Cog or the North Front Range MPO. I see John's up at the podium. John, do you want to address this a little bit better than I can?
No. No. So when these goals are sort of aspirational for the whole plan, while the individual goals, when the state of Colorado passed SB 260, there were greenhouse gas rules that the long range plan needs to follow. So from the air quality perspective, it's sort of baked in, but it's baked in later on down the process as an overall statewide air quality tied back to the state's greenhouse gas roadmap is the name of the document. So we align, but it's feeds up to a statewide sort of goal, not our individuals. And as we move through the process, when we have our preferred project list, that gets modeled for our GHG budget, for lack of a better term. We've been given a certain amount of capacity projects that we're allowed to have. And so we will model for that. And if we're over, we will remove some projects until we're in. So probably not the best answer or the answer you were looking for, but to the extent that the state rules, we comply it through the project selection. And as far as our goals, it's something that we consider, but we didn't feel we needed to state that we're going to follow other rules.
That makes sense. And I appreciate that answer. I wasn't looking for a particular answer. I'm just hopeful that the board will consider all of these topics: water, air, everything that's in their umbrella is impacted by transportation. So
yes, all are considerations.
And that does tie a little bit into our scoring, which is actually what we're going to go into next.
Proceed, Danelle. I don't see any other questions.
Okay, perfect. If we go down one more slide. So I just wanted to let me get my notes out. So we're now at the phase where we're moving on to some of that project selection and some of that development piece. And I just wanted to express to everybody that the LRTP is a little bit unique as a planning document, because one of our primary goals with this is really to bring together the existing plans and component plans that already have been completed by the jurisdiction. So we understand that all of the jurisdictions have their own engineers, they have their own planners. In large part, they have their own plans. They have, for example, Connect COS, Fountain adopted a new transportation master plan in 2022. So all of our work in the LRTP is really to bring together those plans. And as part of that, this is our proposed scoring system, which goes along with our goals. And there is actually a number missing here. So our safety goal is weighted a little bit higher. These were developed, by the way, with our TAC, with our jurisdictions. and those subject matter experts. So our safety criteria is weighted a little bit higher. That has a maximum of 25 points. And that really looks at in particular, the crashes that have happened in the area, crashes that have happened involving vulnerable users. And so we recognize that safety issue is an important one in our region, and TAC has voted to weight that a little bit more hefty because of that. Our maintenance category really looks at the assessed pavement condition or ascent condition. So for example, if a bridge is in really poor condition, that project would receive more points than a bridge project that was in fair or good condition. The operation enhancement criteria, that really looks at how to improve efficiency for the system. So that might be any number of tactics. That might be making improvements to the intersection. It could be integrating acceleration lanes, new transit routes. It could be bicycle and pedestrian improvements, traffic signal upgrades. We have a whole kind of list of different operational enhancements that projects could fall into to receive more points. The environmental criteria talks about incorporating environmental friendly concepts into projects. So some of those elements could include sidewalks or transit that reduce some of that greenhouse gas or air quality issues. It could also include things like green stormwater infrastructure or vegetation or some of those things. So that is our fourth criteria. Our fifth criteria, the mobility criteria, looks at, again, reducing congestion. So that goes back a little bit to improving air quality, but also supporting movement through the region. And so we have some strategic criteria or some strategic corridors that were created during the congestion management process that was adopted back in December. And so these points will really be tied into those kinds of projects that impact those congested areas and those corridors. Another item that the TAC felt really strongly about, wanted to weight it a little bit more heavily, is connectivity. That's facilitating connections throughout the region. And that was kind of reflected in our survey as well, and our goals, that both the public and our jurisdictions felt really strongly about making sure that there are adequate connections throughout both the roadway network and also our other networks, our bicycle and pedestrian network and our transit network as well. So this looks at closing those gaps, also providing some redundancy for critical corridors, that kind of thing. And then finally, we have one last criteria, and that's a priority project. So the TAC has decided to allow each jurisdiction to basically call out one project as this is our top priority project and assign a little bit more points to that particular project. And so those are kind of our big scoring criteria and how we're planning to weight those scoring criteria as we move through the process. And then we have just one more slide to talk about how we're using that scoring criteria, and then we'll open that back up to questions. So this is just a quick high-level flow chart of the project selection process. So we are in the process of defining that project selection process with the jurisdictions. The jurisdictions are actually working right now to get their applications together to submit those projects into us. Once that is complete, we'll score all of the projects. And then, because we realize that no scoring process is going to ever be perfect, we also recognize that we have a wide variety of expertise in our TAC and in our jurisdictions. And so we want to take into account their expertise and also some jurisdictional equity. We don't want all of our small jurisdictions to get shut out of projects just because Colorado Springs projects score higher, for example, if that were to happen. So we do also account for that a little bit in our scoring selection. So we take those elements. We have an initial scoring selection. We will then have to do some evaluation on all of those projects. So we do have to include all of those projects in our travel demand model. We have to do some analysis to adhere to our greenhouse gas rule. And we also have to do some evaluation related to our Title VI requirements and making sure that there are no adverse effect or disproportionately impacted areas from these projects. And then from there, we will actually come back to both the committees and do a public review. So we'll actually release the full document for a public comment period. We'll have some open houses, and then we'll finally move on to finalization and adoption. And all of those 4 elements down there at the bottom, we recognize that we're probably going to have to go back and forth a little bit with the jurisdictions. There's probably going to be some tweaks here and there. So it's a high level process, but we recognize there's probably going to be some little changes here and there depending on how the evaluation goes and what projects come out of it. So I think that's about the end of what I have for you today. What we're looking for the CAC to do is provide us with a recommendation to the board to adopt those vision and goals, and then also the scoring criteria. And that way we can take those items and move forward into the LRTP development process. Any additional questions?
Roland has a question.
One quick question about the open houses. Is that going to be kind of a town hall format? Can you expand on that a bit?
That's a good question, and John might have some additional information for you because this is my first full time through these. But we'll have a couple of different open houses, and I think right now we're looking at a couple of different locations and formats to hopefully be available to the widest range of people. John, do you want to talk a little bit more about format?
Actually, I think you answered that the best way you can. So before the pandemic, you guys all remember that pandemic thing we had, right? So, we would basically try to have different areas of towns and different times of day. So obviously, if you're someone that works up till 5 o'clock, if we have an open house at 3:30, that's no good to you. So we try to have one during the day, or so that the folks that are available then. Plus, we also find that there are folks whose jobs encourage them to participate in these sorts of things, right? So we try to have one sort of before 5, then one that goes after 5 thing. We also try to find locations that spread it around town, and we also try to be off a major bus line. So I think what we did the last time here was we were here in this building. We did Sand Creek Library, and I want to say we did the high school that's up north off just south of the county line there, I don't think it's in Monument, but close to it. But anyway, so we try to hit north, south, central sort of stuff, and we did different times of day. And again, I don't think the Monument one or the close to Monument had a bus line, but the other 2 did. So that's something very similar to what we'll do this time, except now apparently there's this whole virtual world that we didn't really think of. So there'll either be a virtual one in addition to or instead of, and it's just trying to find the balance of how much money and time we have versus what sort of makes the right amount of coverage. So probably a very long answer for something of, I could have said with, yes, we're going to do that and it's going to be great.
No, thank you. I appreciate it. Miley.
Miley Foster, I have a question too, relating back to the beginning of your presentation where you talked about certain planning to include vulnerable users. And I just wanted clarification of what that actually means.
Yes, I'm sorry. So a vulnerable user is a bicyclist or a pedestrian. So we have a database where we identify all of the crashes that have taken place, and we can identify which crashes involved either pedestrians or bicyclists.
Oh, great. Thank you.
John, I do have another question. When you have the town halls or formats or whatever, does some of the jurisdictions have their own in addition to that?
So in theory, the jurisdictions have had their own processes in advance of bringing projects into this, right? So hopefully Colorado Springs is not bringing some new project, some new planner that was hired yesterday comes and says, we want to do this project. Colorado Springs has had Plan COS, Connect COS. So they've had their own sort of processes that they've gone through, that they've gone through and they've determined their priorities. The next thing they sort of do is, well, what funding source is available? Because quite frankly, you would never take a project and bring it into our process and federalize that project with all the extra rules unless you needed to. So if a project can be done with PPRTA money, for example, or can be done with its own jurisdictional funding, that's the path of least resistance. That's the best way to get a project done. So a jurisdiction is going to do that. The projects they bring into our process are either already federalized by their location because they're on a federal facility of some sort, or they need the money or whatever, right? Whatever the reason is, they're going to bring that. But again, they're not going to bring those projects unless it's already been vetted through their process. That being said, let me circle back to, I think the sort of real intent of your question is, when we have the open houses, we do invite the jurisdictional staff to be there and especially put focus on, again, if we're up north, we ask, Monument and El Paso County and others up north jurisdictions to definitely be there. When we're down south, we have Fountain and other jurisdictions to be there to answer any project specific questions people might have, like, why did you pick this project? And what is this project going to do? And, oh, I never even heard of this project. What is it? So we do try to do that. But again, it's based on availability. In a perfect world, we could have everybody there, but not everybody's schedules always align. But we do take copious notes. And if someone has a concern that we can't answer, we'll pass that along to the jurisdiction.
Okay, I just wanted to avoid confusion, so thank you.
I'd like to
Thank
avoid
you.
confusion too, but then I forget and I get confused.
Okay, yeah. Well, go ahead.
Just for clarification, would it be fair to say that the scoring criteria breakout point-wise is based on kind of a county-wide multi-jurisdictional aspect? Because some portions will look at one thing's more important than another. And I'm asking this so when I go back to the county commissioners, I can tell them that it's kind of county-wide balanced out. And the second point is that there's 90 points in here with 0 to 90. It's not a percentile.
That is correct.
Okay, thank you.
And we did actually go through quite a process to make sure all of the smaller jurisdictions and El Paso County, rural El Paso County, at least the portions that are in the MPO, didn't feel like this system favored the higher urban areas too much. So that is definitely something we discussed at length with TAC.
And if I could add, when Danelle showed that second slide that sort of showed the little boxes that were connecting to each other, there was the engineering expertise and jurisdictional equity, right? So you come up with something, and then as you're scoring it, you look and say, well, how did this project score this and that project score that? And you're like, okay, well, that's because as much as we try to be very specific in this. Somebody could have interpreted the rule one way, someone could have interpreted the other. One could have said, oh, well, it's only ADA accessible sidewalks. So unless the sidewalk was 4 feet wide and had ADA appropriate ramps, they got scored. And if it was not ADA, not substandard sidewalk, we didn't count it. While another jurisdiction would have been like, oh no, if there's some asphalt there, we went ahead and counted it, right? So again, it's an imperfect science that we try to make as fair as possible. And so that's why during that stuff, we kind of step back and say, all right, that doesn't quite meet the sniff test. This milk isn't good. We're not making this milkshake. We're throwing this down the sink, right? So that's part of that, to your question, that jurisdictional equity and that making sure that we have a process that treats Green Mountain Falls as fairly as it does Colorado Springs, as fairly as it does the very small portion of unincorporated Teller County with unincorporated El Paso County.
Thank you very much.
Anyone else? Danelle, before we move on for the vote or anything, is this something that's fluid and can be adjusted or whatever? And since it's a 2050 plan, will it be reviewed periodically?
The scoring specifically?
Yes, the scoring.
What element?
If a project for whatever reason seems to be more important 5 or 10 years down the road, will that be addressed during this process?
Yes. So certainly this is a plan. Just because a project gets into the plan doesn't guarantee that it will actually be constructed. And it doesn't mean just because a project doesn't get in the plan doesn't mean that it won't necessarily be constructed with other funding dollars. And of course, we will go back and redo this plan in 5 years. So we're required federally to update our long-range transportation plan every 5 years, every 4 years if we fall into non-attainment for air quality reasons. So it will certainly be updated.
Okay. It's 2050 so far out. I just wanted to be sure.
Yes.
Okay. Any other questions? Hearing none, I see none online at this point. And unless you have more to present, Danelle, I'll call for a motion to accept Danelle's presentation so that she can move it onto the board.
Roland Rainey, a motion for acceptance.
And do we have a second?
I'll second Kathy Heisey.
Any additional discussion? And I see none online. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Going slower now. Okay, that passes. Danelle, you're up next again with the white paper process.
I am. Thank you. So last month, you might recall that we gave a little bit of an overview about Pikes Peak Area Council of Governments, what our role in the community is, a little bit about CAC's role in the community, and an idea that Welling Clark has brought to us as staff about creating a white paper so that members of the CAC can submit ideas to the PPACG staff that might be something we can take some action on. And so we worked with Welling a little bit to create a template. And that way it would give staff a way to, I think, pretty easily review things, see whether or not something is a PPACG issue or isn't. We can provide a little bit of background or the correct point of contact, perhaps, if it's not a PPACG issue. And then if it is something that could be a PPACG issue, we would take that internally, have some discussion on it, talk with our executive director, and see if that's something that that makes sense for PPACG to address. So we really just wanted to bring this back to the CAC to make sure this is something you all are interested in implementing, make sure that the template makes sense, And Mr. Clark, if you have anything else to add at this point, that would be lovely.
Well, I was just thinking by having people present and create a white paper, it takes a lot of burden off the staff and frees staff up to make a quick decision. Also, I know you get inputs not only from CAC members, but from other people in the community. And this might actually apply for that to help streamline and expedite getting information back and forth and helping you do your job and not be bogged down with answering things. And that's kind of where this white paper was going. It was basically just to provide a process. So whoever has recommendations does their homework first, and they might realize it's not appropriate for the CAC, for the PPACG, or it may be appropriate, but it gives it all in a nutshell. And staff and I went back and forth on how to work it. And a lot of the recommendations here will help them expedite getting something, and within a matter of 5 to 10 minutes, knowing where to go and who to give it to. So that was the process for this, just to help speed up, because they are very busy people. Thank you, Danielle.
If the citizens are going to use this template, will it be online, or how will that process work?
We certainly can put this online for on our CAC page. We had also talked a little bit about creating a frequently asked questions list to distribute to the CAC and to put on our website as well. I'm not 100% sure how that would work with members of the general public. We haven't really talked about that too much internally, but we can revisit that and see if that's something that that our leadership wants to.
Yeah, if it warrants it. If you don't get anything from the general public, then it would just be some members here that are submitting information.
Sure. We're always open to members of the general public to ask us questions. If we get phone calls, we chat with them, we call them back, we answer their questions to the best that we can. But I don't know that we want to put the burden on the public to create a white paper. So that's something we'd have to talk about internally.
Chris has a question.
Yes, and I guess my first thing would be to say that I think this makes sense for the CAC to come up with a white paper if there's a topic. I think you should think long and hard about opening it up to the public. But if you do, or even if it's just to the CAC members, I would recommend having something on the white paper instructions where the person submitting the white paper also has to say which strategic plan goals of the PPACG you're looking at, just to keep it from being a shotgun approach like you do in your motion form, where you say which strategic plan area this is going toward, just to keep it from being a shotgun approach.
We could certainly add that.
We have a question online from Chuck.
I was curious if there's a way, speaking as a relatively new member, that future new members would be made aware of the form as they join the CAC, so that so that they understand that there's a process in place.
Yes, we definitely would need to make that part of our onboarding materials and make sure that all the new members of the CAC are educated and made aware of that. Thank you.
Go ahead.
I really appreciate Welling doing this, because I'd probably be one of the most bringing issues. And it just happens that one of the issues that Welling used as an example, I did bring something. I'm sorry I didn't bring it early enough to make copies. But in 2010, the Safe Routes, the federally funded Safe Routes to School, paid for improving the intersection at Hancock over the Van Buren Ditch, which is immediately adjacent to Horace Mann School. And there have been a number of accidents there. I happen to live next to the poor besieged Todd Frisbee, our city traffic engineer, and I bring him pictures of the students waiting to cross there. And so now they're planning to put a pedestrian island there, which I think is really significant. And in terms of interdepartmental jurisdictions, the Park Department has just recognized our first Greenway Committee
which is working on the Rock Island Trail. And our first project is the city has just gotten some additional land between the Mann Middle School and the Van Buren Ditch, which is right next to that intersection. So there's a lot of kind of interplay here. And I don't know how best to get this kind of information to PPACG because it seems relevant.
You're a great straight person, Judith, because if we scroll down, there's that example that was sent to me by someone about safe schools. And if we can scroll down to the example right here, this is, and a couple pages farther down, this is what someone kind of sent. And with the structure we came up with, I implemented the information into here. So we had the subject, the request to PPACG, then the background, some other information in there. And then at the very bottom, you'll see PPACG's response. And that go back to that person and that then document that information as well. So we have a template. We've also got an example. In this case, PPACG really doesn't do that, but they can point you in the right direction.
No, this particular one really comes back in a big way to safety. So.
And also be kind to your neighbor. It was just Todd's birthday.
Thank you. I did not know that.
Danelle, you have anything else to present on this?
I don't. Just looking for tax approval to put this into place.
Okay.
I do just have one question, Danelle. The intent of this process was to create something that would help PPACG staff. Will something like this, in your opinion, and those that you've worked with, help you all handle things like this?
I do think, in particular, when we get the same question, especially, when there's several of us that are fairly new to PPACG. So having something like this, I think, will help just to share information. That's one of our primary jobs at PPACG. So sharing information with the CAC, with all of our jurisdictions, even with other staff members. I think this can be a good tool for that.
Okay, so you don't see it as creating additional burden or?
I don't think so.
Okay.
Yeah, that's good to know.
Okay, I don't see any other questions. Do we have a motion for Danelle to move forward with this?
Welling Clark, El Paso County, I motion to move this forward to the board of directors.
Actually, that's not what the motion
Oh.
is. I mean, I'm sorry, that was actually the guts of my next question, which was, this is our first opportunity, I think, since I've been on the CAC to review and approve something as opposed to a review and recommend for approval, the white paper process. And I was just wondering, does this go to the board? Is the board aware of this, or is it just between us and staff?
It's for us to approve, to pass forward, for them to accept it or deny. Yeah, we're recommending it, but
This is one of the rare things that that we don't necessarily have to take to the board. From the conversations we've had internally, it's something that we feel we can go ahead and implement, but we wanted to formally make sure that was the CAC's wishes.
Okay.
Chuck has another question before we go.
No, I was going to second Welling's motion.
I just want, if the second will take this as a friendly adjustment or a change to the motion that the CAC adopt or approve and adopt this process for its membership and submitting recommendations to PPACG.
And do you still second that, Chuck?
I do.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. And a comment.
And Andy Gunning with PPACG. Thank you for spending time on this. And Danelle and John kind of got me up to speed on the process. And this is going to be a really good tool. And I don't think we need to take it to the board for approval, but I definitely want to take it to them and brief them on the conversations that you all have been having and how to engage more with the public and raise these issues. So I think it's a really good tool that we can use in a lot of different ways. So just wanted to say thank you for that. So appreciate it. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you for your comment.
Teresa Cheek, I just had a quick question. Are we going to change the form to include the strategic goal that it goes with as well?
That sounds like a great idea.
Well, then that's going to change your motion if we do that.
Okay. Danielle, help me out. How do we want to
I
word
was
this
going to say,
motion?
we've got a motion and a second on the floor if we're going to.
So I'll chime in. Well, if
Yeah.
you want to do that, and
Thank
then
you.
as long as the individual who seconded it is willing to do so as well. So if Chuck is willing to agree to that, then we can amend the motion. But it has to be you willing to do that.
I wholeheartedly agree to incorporate PPCGA. Chris, what was that terminology? Strategic plan goal.
Sure that the strategic plan goal that it goes to, one of the 5 goals is noted, so we know which goal.
Okay. So Jared, you got that?
I'm good with that as long as Chuck's good with that.
I'm good
As
with it.
second.
Chuck?
Chuck, are you okay with the change in Welling's motion?
Sorry, I was looking to see which goal that we would apply this to, but yes, I'm good with the motion.
Any one of those 5 goals, basically.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. So all in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay. And I think Danelle, you can proceed on with whatever you have to do to get that accomplished, I guess.
We will do that. Thank you very much.
At this time, I need to ask the group here if you're willing to amend our agenda. We've got a presenter for item 6B that would like to go ahead of A, and we'd need a motion to change the agenda.
Well, in Clark, El Paso County, recommend adjusting the agenda.
And we have a second on that.
Roy Rosenthal, Manitou, second.
Okay. And if there's no discussion, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? There are none. So Jared, we can,
The dog out there.
yeah, I heard the dog. Anyway, Jared, we can change that on your part.
Nope, that works. And if you're good, we've got Paul Rochette who's online who can go ahead and go.
Okay.
Before we do that, I'm sorry, could you tell us what page in the packet we're jumping to?
71.
All right, so is everyone ready here? So,
Yes, sir.
so first of all, I'd like to thank all of you for allowing me to change positions here. Had kind of an unexpected demand upon my time today, and so anyhow, we're adapting to that. But Jared, while I'm talking, I'm wondering, can you bring up our SEDS draft that I can refer to in a little bit? You have it. Wonderful. Good job. So I thought I don't have any really nice presentation like Danelle's, so she set a standard that I can't meet, but I'll do my best to speak clearly and hopefully interestingly. But first of all, let me start off with the definition of what a SEDS is. It stands for a Comprehensive Economic Development Strategy. And it is a task that we've just taken on this year. And the funding for this and the impetus from this comes from the U.S. Economic Development Agency. EDA has provided funds to regions around the country to write comprehensive economic development strategies, and most regions have one, but there's still, I think there were 3 in Colorado that did not have one, and we were one of them. Maybe it was 4. Andy would know. But we got the funds that was passed from EDA through the Colorado Office of Economic Development, International Trade, and we began working on this project in about March. And essentially, the purpose of a SEDS is actually there's 3 reasons why we're doing a SEDS. The first one is EDA in the past has made grants available to regions for various economic development projects. But in the future, EDA is only going to be able to make awards to a region if they have an adopted SEDS. And we have one very large grant right now that is in process of, and that's the Fountain Creek Rail Project. They're looking for EDA funds, but we anticipate there'll be more in the future. So one is to make sure that we're eligible for EDA grants. But I'm also informed by the EDA person that SEDS will either be required or useful for gaining evaluation points on grant requests to agencies such as FEMA, Department of Education, Department of Agriculture, and perhaps some other federal agencies. So we found that it's probably pretty important to have this done simply for the funding purposes. The second major reason for the SEDS is that the state of Colorado puts out an economic development strategy. And in the past, they've never received any inputs from the Pikes Peak area. And this is our opportunity to provide input that goes into the state plan. And we thought that's a great opportunity. Let's proceed with that. And the third value of this is that this provides an opportunity for the various economic sectors and subsectors of the region to communicate with each other, to collaborate with each other. So we've tried to design this SEDS so that it begins to set up future collaborative efforts to improve our economy for our citizens. Now, once again, the SEDS is being written for El Paso, Teller, and Park County. So, so far, to get this done, and we're just about finished with it. We're now in the review process, and we're really happy to provide it to you for your comment and inputs. But the way we've gone about this is we developed initially a stakeholder committee, which was a listing of everybody we could think of that would be involved in an economic development strategy. And we had a kickoff meeting in, I think it was late March or so, and we had about 50 people attend that. We then went to the next step. Before we give them something to review, we created a steering committee. And the steering committee ultimately grew to about 15 people. And it included folks from various chambers of commerce, Woodland Park, Monument, and Colorado Springs. It includes city and town planners, Monument, Fountain, Colorado Springs, Woodland Park, Cripple Creek, and a number of other communities. It also included representatives from industry, from nonprofits, from community organizations, and just a number of other folks who regularly work in economic development. Now, to produce the SEDS, there's an outline that was provided by EDA. And in essence, that outline really said, let's start with some vision and mission, and then let's do an assessment of the economy. From that, develop a SWOT analysis. From the SWOT analysis, try and come up with some strategies for based on the results of the SWOT, and then some projects that will move towards addressing those strategies, and finally some metrics and measures to see if we can monitor progress in those projects. Before I started digging into this, we reviewed a number of SEDS from around the country, and I think from the 10 SEDS I looked at, I found 10 different approaches. So we felt kind of free to develop something that fits us. So we started meeting with the steering committee, and like the first piece that we used is the Colorado Springs Economic Development Council had commissioned a very large study you may be familiar with, the Newmark study, and they provided us a copy. It's not a public document, but we were able to use many pieces as we went forward. But then we began meeting both as a steering committee, and I started doing interviews with folks throughout the region. And I ended up doing 44 interviews with people across diverse, both primary sectors, as well as, I'll just read off the list, arts and entertainment, tourism, sports, recreation, healthcare, education, universities, childcare, wildfire. Folks talk about the CHIPS Act, the military, workforce development, transportation, broadband, mining and agriculture, and utilities. So we really looked at, let's not just focus on the primary job generating sectors that pay the highest wages. Let's look at all of those economic subsystems that are necessary for economic success of a region. So So we did a lot of interviews. We looked at a lot of other communities, strategic plans, documents from nonprofits, so on and so forth. And over time, we developed a draft SEDS, and it began to evolve over the summer and here in the early fall. We ended up, after coming up with vision and missions, we came up and an economic profile of the region, which is pretty high level. We came up with a series of SWOTs, and we came up with 3 separate sets of SWOT. One SWOT for the urban area, one for the suburban area, and one for rural areas. From that, we moved on to kind of look at, okay, what are the profile those economic sectors and those economic subsectors. And then from the interviews and from our research, from other documents and just our own individual knowledges, we started finding opportunities for projects that we think we could accomplish. Now, the EDA was really kind of looking for very, very specific projects with defined proponents, estimated cost, completion dates, and we felt that we're really not ready for that. So we came up with a long list of identified needs and wants and opportunities, but they're really yet to be formed into proper projects that will be advanced within the region. But there are a large number of them, and they'll be found in the SEDS. From that, the SEDS also included sections on resiliency. And so I started talking about both natural resiliency as well as economic resiliency. There was a section on equity and inclusion. Then we went into the analysis of the Newmark study, where they talked about their, I think it was 6 key targets in their attract category and another 4 in their maintain and support category. And then we came up with a number of other projects that other people have identified multiple times. For example, some of the big ones that came out is the need for more childcare. And childcare is necessary both for the economic well-being of the citizens, as well as the economic attractiveness of the region and the ability of families to work and take care of the kids at the same time. Broadband came up. A number of projects came up from University of Colorado Springs and the Pikes Peak State College system. And they're working in conjunction with the Pikes Peak Workforce Center and several other agencies. Youth education has come up. I'm still getting some material from School District 11 on some of their high priorities that still has to be incorporated into the SEDS. And ultimately, the SEDS is about 64 pages long. Our goal had been 40 pages, so we kind of passed that up, but we don't think there's much fluff in the whole thing. So I guess that's a very good thing that it's 64. We really dug into this. We've sent it to EDA and to the state OEdit office for a preliminary review of it. They like it. They think it's going to meet the requirements and will be a useful document. With that, and Danielle said that I should have about 10 minutes or so. So I'm trying to make this fairly brief, but I'm here for as long as you have questions and want more explanation on my part. But I thought what I would do is kind of just quickly scroll through the SEDS to give you a visual of what the SEDS really is all about. So Jared, and you've got the SEDS up. I got to figure out how to make it bigger on my screen so that I can see what I'm talking about. So this is, we have an intro that is still just a placeholder. We have to get a letter from the board. So right now it's in Latin and it's just basically says the Pikes Peak region is the best region in the world. So we'll just keep going on because we're going to replace that. So this is the table of contents and you'll basically see the elements that I talked about. We start off with kind of talking about process and timeline for those who are not familiar with the SEDS whatsoever. And we really talk about what I just essentially said is how we form stakeholder group and steering committee and the interviews that we've done and the sources of information. And essentially what we've done there, a map of the region. Here's some vision and values. And these vision and values were developed by the steering committee. So, that's something that you're, invited to comment on. So let's keep going. We have some guiding principles, and really it says that, we're really trying to approach this from a very high level, but also from a very broad perspective, so that this is not a silo of one particular approach to economic development. Jared, keep going. Some overarching strategies. Once again, this came from the steering committee. And these really, from a big picture, if we had to summarize, what are we attempting to do? What we're attempting to do is raise the standard of living of all of our citizens by supporting the needs, the economic development needs of both the rural and urban and suburban sectors. We really want to develop a robust and resilient infrastructure system. We recognize we have lots of risk, like so many communities do. Protect our natural environment. Focusing on workforce development and education rose to the top as some of our greatest desires among all of the participants. And then assist the region in providing all those secondary systems to assist and support and encourage growth of not just primary jobs, but all jobs in the region. So Jared, next page. Talked a little bit about the said structure. Keep going, Jared. Just an economic profile. We pulled out about, say, 10 or so various economic data points, so that we can really talk about how big is the economy, what's it made up of, race and ethnicity, age categories, employment, education, so on and so forth. Keep going there. Keep going. GDP growth for our 3 counties in the region compared to the state total. Keep going. And just some overall discussion on the economy. And these are all kind of setting up what's coming yet. This is kind of the prelude to the real essence of the SEDS. Keep going. So we talk about resiliency. And my focus is, my other hat that I wear as the military planning program manager, is I'm working on both stormwater issues and wildfire issues. So and energy resiliency, particularly associated with the military installations. So I talk about the natural environment. And then as an economist by trade, we keep going and I start talking about the built environment and the overall economy. Keep going there. So equity and inclusion, that is a required element of the SEDS. And I talked about it both from a high level perspective of what folks are doing in the region, but I also spent some time over at the mayor's office of community affairs and their diversity and their equity and inclusion staff person. I got a lot of information from her. So I think this is a really important and yet non-controversial piece. I think it's valuable for our region to include equity and inclusion as a basic element. So let's keep going. So we talk about the regional target industry. So talk about the regional MSA SWAT and what it is, what's it comprised of. You'll see these 10 sectors here are the 10 sectors that were in the Newmark study. So because a tremendous amount of work had been done with that, the EDC and Chamber has invested a tremendous amount of time and energy and have decided to really focus on primary job development. I thought this was best to lead with in the SEDS report. Keep going. So we get into the strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. So let's go down a little bit and talk about the urban target industry SWOT. And most of these SWOT elements were drawn out of the Newmark study because they particularly refer to target industries. So let's keep going, and we can always go back and look at these in detail if you wish. And I know this is kind of a fire hose, but we'll go through it quickly and come back as you wish. Then keep going. Now we talk about the suburban communities. They're a bit different, as you all are well aware of. Many of the SWOT elements here are particular to a specific town or county. Others are more common across the board. But all of them kind of, we think, describe our suburban areas, which are significantly different enough from the urban area that they deserve their own SWOT analysis. Let's keep going. The same thing is true with the rural communities. Once again, quite different from the urban and suburban areas. Now, sometimes it was a little difficult to determine if a particular area is suburban or urban or rural for that matter, but this is kind of a generalized approach. So let's keep going. So now we talk about target industries. And once again, this comes mostly from the Newmark study, but I've added a fair amount into it. Keep going there, Jared. And so I talk about how these individual industries were rated and what elements that important to the success of these target industries, which ones were most important. I list those. Then I give just a little bit of a high-level discussion of each of the key industries. Aerospace and defense is one. Finance insurance is the next one. Cyber, which is a very strong hot topic in the region. Advanced manufacturing and semiconductors is our fourth. Hardware manufacturing is a fifth element. And medical device manufacturing is the sixth one. And as you can see, these are high-paying sectors, but they're also, and they're drivers for an overall economy, and yet they don't reach out to every member of the community, and therefore it's fundamental, but not sufficient. So let's keep going down. The regional strategy number 2 were the 4 sectors from the Newmark study that we want to just maintain and grow as they are, and that's healthcare, tourism, military, and what's our fourth one? Higher education. Now you'll find later in the report we get quite a bit of needs that show up in the SEDS from these second strategy sectors. Regional strategy number 3 is just everything else that we find, and very little of it was actually in the Newmark study. And therefore, this adds a robustness, a color, some meat to the bones of what we have. And here you begin to see the elements, the key concerns that start showing up: childcare, broadband, low and middle income housing, existing recreation and natural beauty, workforce development, small business assistance, and Cripple Creek and Victor is concerned about replacing the mine when it finally pans out. Increasing market for agricultural products, suburban community participation in commuter rail discussions, increased participation in suburban communities, and attraction of some of these new primary sectors. They're going, yeah, they're great to go in Colorado Springs. Let's see if we can get some in our communities as well. And then economic vitality of downtowns. Okay, keep going there, Jared. So now we start talking about some of the economic subsystems. Military installations, I thought, really deserve its own section. I'd done the study for the state on the economic impact of DoD, and it's much more robust than most people understand. It's a very diverse, many people think military is a single industry. It's an incredibly diverse industry within itself. So we talk about the military installations. Let's keep going. And we talk about the number of active duty personnel. Then we talk about natural resources, which is a very short section. Our biggest natural resource that we utilize is the gold mine in Cripple Creek. We have sand and gravel. Don't have much else in terms of natural resource extraction. Agriculture and ranching operations didn't really get a whole lot of input from the ag community, but I tried to pull out some key data elements about what is our agricultural economy of the region, and it's significant. We're talking about almost $40 million in market value of their output. So now we talk about nonprofits, huge element in the region. So I try to just profile what is our nonprofit makeup of the region. And as you'll see, the largest, based by the National Taxonomy of Exempt Entities, the largest sector is education, followed by religion and spiritual development, and then other sectors as well. So let's keep going. Keep going here. Transportation. So I talk about transportation network, transit, rail, and air cargo. And once again, the purpose of having many of these things in here is so that in a future grant request, we can point to their existence in the SEDS. So sometimes just a high level mention is sufficient for the purpose that we anticipate this can be used for, to say, yes, we want to go after a rail project, go to page so-and-so, we've talked about it. Education, very critical element here. I still have a little more work to do, but there's a lot of information here from both USCCS and PPCC. Educational attainment and school evaluations are included in here. Keep going. Medical and healthcare. We talk about the hospital systems, and I pull information out of some of the hospital reporting systems to talk about areas that we have in terms of need. This graph right here basically says, you know, we may be doing great with hospital systems. We still have some problems. We still kind of sit in the middle of the pack of Colorado counties from mental health needs and paying medical bills on time and childcare. So we don't have a lot of laurels to rest on here. So let's keep going. Keep going along. Childcare. So I talk about the shortage of childcare. And I have from a conference I went to on Friday down at Fort Carson, I want to add a little more about the military's need for childcare. That's still another area of shortage. So I have to add that in here yet. So let's keep going. Sports, recreation, and tourism. And once again, interviewed in 3 or 4 different entities involved with this area, maybe 5. I can't think right off the top of my head. Tried to create just a profile, a vision of what all we have in the region. We're quite blessed and quite rich in terms of things to do. Let's keep going. Keep going here. Arts and entertainment, another very important element of the region to make it wholesome and enriching. Let's keep going. Wildfire mitigation, there's a lot that's actually going on besides the city's 2D effort and the efforts of some of the smaller fire departments and the efforts of the military installation fire folks. We're really working on trying to bring together some additional Department of Defense dollars and create kind of a landscape approach to wildfire mitigation as a collaborative effort among everyone who's here involved in wildfire. Let's keep going. Labor force training and supply. Huge area of both effort and need. Let's keep going there, Jared. And we talk about older workers' needs as well, and matching job openings with skill development. Talk about that. And military and veteran and spouse employment needs. Let's keep going. The CHIPS Act, which is essentially a federal program to try and bring back chip manufacturing to the United States. And I think we have a lot of effort going towards taking advantage of the CHIPS Act to bring manufacturing back to Colorado Springs. Communications, broadband and fiber. Once again, we find a great deal of need, especially in the rural areas, both for healthcare, education, tourism, business needs. I mean, it's a very broad element of their economic development. Housing supply and affordability. We did not go too deep into housing supply because you have to have boundaries about how far out we can go. We did not deal with crime. We did not deal with homelessness. So we're kind of reaching the boundaries of what we think we could include, but we do talk about the missing middle and the lack of low-income housing. Let's keep going. Talked a little bit about utilities as a backbone of the economy. Let's keep going. Keep pulling material up. Then we started talking about what are the common difficulties and concerns that we need to overcome. It's kind of in some ways, it's a reiteration of what we've come across already, but trying to package it all on one page. Let's keep going. What are our strengths and opportunities? This is beginning to set us up for the next section, which is where do we start listing the projects without calling them projects that we can be held accountable for? So let's keep moving on. Some goals and metrics that we want to work with, and they're really more narrative than they are numeric. Let's keep going down. some key insights, things that we're seeing that we can work off of. And let's keep going there. And Appendix A, this is the local projects where I pull together most everything that folks have said to me that we ought to do. And I kind of do some general strategies. And then I get, so I had to put them in different categories. Community development is another one. And keep going. Now we talk a little bit about our competitive advantages. How can we use these advantages to be successful in our projects? Then I talk about the business environment projects that we may need. And do a list of our recent successes, bringing in new jobs. And then just kind of a philosophical appendix of working together as a community. And I think this is what I hope that we as a community get out of this whole effort in the first place. How do we really bring people together and increase our ability to succeed? So let's keep going. I think that's about it. And then we have credits. And as you'll see, there's a large number of folks who have been involved, organizations, stakeholders, steering committee members, and so on and so forth. And with that, I know I went way over my 10 minutes, but let me open it up for comments and questions. Any?
Okay, Welling.
Question, I noticed on the strategic or resource strategy number 2, we had listed weighted averages in the number 1 category, but not in the number 2. Was that data not available?
Yeah, I believe that data was not available.
Okay. And the second thing is on credits, the individual observations. This is something more for me to go back to my sponsor, El Paso County. I saw Park County and then Teller County were represented in here, but El Paso County was not. Does that mean El Paso County was made the offer to get involved and declined on that?
It does not. It does not.
Oh.
We basically had representing the county a lot of information. Let's see. I'm trying to remember.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's what I want to make sure. So,
Yeah.
because in case I get asked that question, I can answer it.
Yeah, Crystal Latier was very involved. Rachel Maxwell was very involved. And, we had a number of other folks. So, yes, and it's also gone, a quick presentation was made to the board last month. And it's also going out. And see, Jared, did we send it to any county commissioners? I think we did we not?
So, I mean, they're on, those who are on our board of directors would have seen it. So that covers 3 of the 5 county commissioners. And then we also did the public notice and everything else for the public comment period.
And we're encouraging anyone to share this with anyone else that they think would be interested in. And if you'd like us to specifically send it to the other 2 county commissioners, we'd be happy to do that as well. In fact, we probably should. It's probably a great idea.
Chris, you have a question?
I do. Thank you for your presentation. And I do think a SEDS is a great thing for our region. But I do have a couple of questions. First of all, can you explain what's going on under the bachelor degree educational attainment? El Paso County was leading the charge on that from 2016 to 2020. And then in 2021, it dropped off significantly. Anecdotally, or do you have any information on why that happened? And then I have one more comment.
Yeah, I think the data provider, where I got that from, has an error. That's my guess.
Okay, you might need an asterisk then, because that looks really bad.
It looks terrible. I saw that too. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. And then my next concern, and I'm speaking as an old school board member, it's alarming. I don't know which one I am more alarmed about. The fact that K-12 education is considered a weakness in both the suburban and rural SWAT, or that it's not considered a strength, opportunity, weakness, or threat in the urban SWAT. It is. And where I came from, our local school district and our the Chamber of Commerce created the EDC because we recognized that without great industry coming in, we were going nowhere as a school district. We wouldn't, it would become unsustainable as a school district, in basically a bedroom community. So it's very interesting to me that, well, I guess my question would be, are any of the, or how many of the stakeholders that you used to create this were superintendents or school board members? And then secondly, I would say, reading this gives me concern because I think it's very difficult to attract industry if you don't have a place, not only a place to put kids in terms of childcare, but then preparing those children for, you know, their own great economic life future.
I couldn't agree with you more. The reason I don't have it either as a strength or an opportunity, I mean, a strength or a weakness in the urban area, is because I've gotten differing opinions from different sources. And that then becomes a value judgment that I don't wish to make. Who I'm working with, essentially, I talked to Dr. Gall's office at School District 11, and it's escaping me, his assistant, who I met with last week, and he is passing the SEDS around to several colleagues this week, and I expect to get his comments. I hope to get his comments by Friday. But if I don't, I will certainly get them for the final version of the SEDS. But you know, I know that there are a number of programs that they're involved with that I do wish to capture. But in terms of whether we call this a strength or a weakness, I'm not sure what to do. So it's, you know, some folks, I know it showed up at one place in the Newmark study as a weakness. But on the other hand, you know, we have some wonderful programs that are that are creating opportunities for kids that are admirable. So yeah.
Well, I appreciate that. I appreciate that you have to, you know, speak truth, but I also worry about school district improvement not, or being pretty front and center in your SEDS, because I think it really is a black eye. So that's my comment.
Well, any suggestions are always welcome from any of you. Yeah.
Any other questions? I know Paul's on a tight timeline, so. Oh, Judith, go ahead.
Paul's mother is a friend of mine, so he better be tolerant. So I have a couple of questions. I share Chris's concern about the education. I used to be the chair for D11. So I think the education thing is really important. But the other thing that's really important to me is the environmental impact. And I'm wondering if when you look at all of these industries, which have a lot of environmental impact, if you consider the results of the toxic release inventory, because microchip fares very poorly if you look at that environmental data. And I think that's significant because from what I've read and from what colleagues in business tell me, a lot of really good companies look for quality of life. That's a huge important aspect for them. So that schooling and childcare is very important. And then 2 semesters ago, I audited the geography class at UCCS in tourism. And one of the interesting concepts that's been raised in the recent decade is over-tourism. And if you follow Seth Booster in the Gazette about how awful Garden of the Gods is in the summertime. I'm a native plant master. We just don't go there in the summertime. It's just, we have a real problem with over-tourism. So I think assessing some of these things realistically is important.
You know, it's a struggle in that, you know, some of the SEDS that are done around the country, and you know, this may sound whiny or excusey, but you know, sometimes their grants are $300,000 grants. Ours is 40,000, and that gives us a limit on how deep we can go. You know, the more I did, the more I find that I can add. But at some point, I just have to stop. So, Judith, I'm not sure how to include your concerns. It's another layer down in terms of the both intended and unintended consequences. So is it something that we can address in a SEDS as an economic development need? I guess is the question.
No, I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm not an economist.
Okay. And I don't want to be ducking the question. I'm just not quite sure, how to incorporate that in the SEDS.
Paul, I just had a quick question. For the steering committee, is there a reason why you didn't list the companies or roles that those folks are representing by their names?
I should. I will.
Okay, yeah, I think that'd be helpful because I see it for the individual observations, but that would just paint a picture of who's, guiding this.
Sure. Yeah. Like Andy
thank you.
Merritt with Catalyst Campus. I don't say Catalyst Campus anywhere. Okay.
Thanks.
Okay, anyone else? Okay, Paul, well, thank you for the very informative presentation.
All right. Well, thank all of you. I appreciate your time.
And we need a lesson on Latin next time.
Well, I was going to convert it to Italian. I'm better at that. So anyway,
Okay.
all right. Thanks,
Okay, well,
everybody.
thank you very much.
Bye-bye.
Moving along, Jason, are you still with us? Okay.
Since we brought up the Pig Latin, Jason nay, had nay, a doctor's nay, appointment nay. So I apologize. I was unaware that Paul was coming up on the agenda. But so we originally had Jason scheduled, and like I said, Jason had this appointment and we didn't know. So my apologies for that we didn't quite work that out in advance. So if we are with your permission, we'll bring it back next month.
I think that would be great. And we need to do some more. It's not quite 5. No. Anyway, any member announcements in person or online? Welling doesn't even have one. We're doing great.
Oh, I've got one. Wait a minute.
Here's Chris. Here's Chris.
I've got one. Chris Crockett with Kono, and I was asked to let you know that we are wrapping up work, that Kono is wrapping up work on the creation of a neighborhood association in Nob Hill. The aim is to combine this new neighborhood association along with 4 other downtown working class neighborhoods to form a new downtown coalition that will create some new programs for residents in these areas to combat gentrification and displacement. The neighborhoods will be K-Land, Hillside, Nob Hill, and Mill Street, and Stratton Meadows. The work on this will start in December and be completed and presented to City Council by May of 2024. And also another announcement to let you know that we will be, that we expect community area planning to be wrapped up for half of Southeast Colorado Springs by the end of the year. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else?
Well, as the representative of League of Women Voters, I certainly hope everyone is registered to vote and realizes that there is an election coming up, and there have been so many opportunities, especially with our school districts. And I think it is a really serious issue that we need to pay attention to locally. And I don't think we've ever had as many opportunities to see these forums with the various candidates. So I hope everybody's paying attention.
Hope so. Yeah, thank you. Anyone else? And I see nothing online. Jared, next meeting date, do you have your calendar with you? Well, while Jared looks up our next meeting date, which I would like to thank everyone for attending today. I think this is probably the best represented meeting we've had in a long time. So thank you very much.
So I got it there. So right now, the next meeting is scheduled for November 29th. I believe that is the Wednesday after Thanksgiving, so I don't think that should provide any conflict. That is usually something we have to be careful of as we get into this time of year. Just to put on your radar, and it's not a decision we have to make right now, but the next meeting for December would tentatively be scheduled for December 27th. So like I said, not something we have to decide today, but something that you might want to be thinking about to discuss at the November meeting.
We'll probably address that next month. No other questions? We will be adjourned then. Thank you.